Hello, I guess. Welcome to my first vlog or YouTube channel. I'm going to start going over some of our presets and what they can do, what they can't do. So here we are, we're inside Lightroom and we have our presets over here. So let's just get started. All right, so here we have black and white classic. Here we have a harder contrast. Here we have a low contrast. Here we have our color with the lens correction. Here we have a color without the lens correction. And then here we have a hard fade, which is knocks the highlights down a little bit. So I'm going to reset this one again. What I tend to do is I'm going to start with color balance right here. And what I like to do is just move it around until it looks right. And then I'll play with the tint. And okay, let's get into it. So this is the classic with no lens correction. Here it is with the lens correction. So it's going to eliminate the vignette. If you don't like that, you can just scroll down and remove these here. So just to start off, I usually shoot close to overexposure. So this one's a little bit bright. So I'm just going to pull that down a little bit. Maybe add a little contrast. And that looks pretty good. So let's check out before and after. Not bad. Let's see how it looks in black and white. And hard contrast. Low. I'm going to go with the hard. And I'm going to pull the shadows in a little bit too. Looks good. We've added two bonus black and whites, which are going to be more of a alternative look. So here is number two, and what you want to do with these is if this isn't working for you, just pull the highlights and the whites in, exposure down a little bit. So these are going to give you more of a matte look. And here's the first one, same thing. Just much more matte. So the main objective with these presets is a lot of times when we're working with presets, you have to subtract contrast or saturation. Well, these are a starting point where you're going to want to add to the presets rather than take away. So this one again has the lens correction. So I'm going to come down here and remove it if I don't like it. Or what you can do is just use this one, NLC, which is no lens correction. And that's just going to apply there. All right, let's get into another one. So let's try black and white. Looks good. So if you want more of a like a silvery gray, you can come into this tone curve area here and click on this little tab, and you can pull the lights in, and that's going to give it more of a silver kind of a gray, middle gray look. And other than that, I'm not really doing too much at all. Okay, so let's reset this one. Let's check it out in color. And if you want the one with lens correction, it's just a classic CO1. And you're going to see it's going to remove the vignetting for you. So I think this one looks pretty good. I'm just going to pull the whites down a little bit. And then the red is looking pretty saturated here, so that's fairly easy to eliminate. So you just come into your HSL and then pull your red back a little bit. And that way you have a little bit more of a desaturated look. Let's check it out before and after. So they're subtle. The main thing is that we don't want the post-production to get in the way of the actual photograph. So on the left, the before image looks good already. We just want to enhance what we have there. So let's check it out here. We have a hard fade. This is going to crush the whites more. So look in the highlights as soon as I click this. And this one doesn't have the lens correction. So if you want that, you just come down and enable profile corrections, and that's going to remove the vignetting. it looks like it bumps the exposure a little bit, but it's not really happening. It just bumps the exposure up in the corners. Okay, let's get into another one here. This one here, I think needs to be in black and white. It just does, but we'll play with it in color. So again, I'm going to come up to the temperature and I'm just going to move that until it looks right. And then I'm going to bump the exposure. So these presets won't adjust your temperature or your exposure at all. So this one gave it the lens correction. This one's without. This one's with a hard fade. So we can bring the exposure down a little bit. There it is. Looks good. Let's check it out before. If it's too warm, you can just bring this down. Maybe that's better right there. Let's check it out, babe. All right, working. Let's try this in black and white because this one's really gonna shine. All right, so these shadow tones look a little bit deep. All you have to do is come in here and bump the shadows. Maybe pull the highlights and whites down. You can bring the blacks in if you want for more contrast. Looks good. Here's a hard contrast version. So here you might want to bump the shadows a little bit just so those midtones can breathe. Um, here's a low contrast version. And again, here's some of the bonus ones. So this one is going to be pretty matte. Bump the shadows. Here's the second bonus one. And that's just applied with no real adjustments. All right, what else do we have? I like this photo. Okay, so here we have black and white with the lens correction. Or no, I'm sorry, no lens correction. Hard contrast, low contrast. Okay, so really all you need to do here is pull these blacks in, pull the whites down, and the highlights. And I'm going to reset it, and here's our color with the lens correction. Here's without. Here it is with the hard fade. And here I don't think we really even need to touch it, but if you want to, I might pull the whites in just a little bit and the highlights down. And that's that. Let's see. All right, I like this one too. So I think this one needs to be warmed up just a little, so I'm going to pull that in. Here it is. Color, lens corrections, no lens correction, hard fade. I might bump the shadows a little just so it can breathe. Pretty simple. So the thing is that I just want these to work fast, and I want them to be more universal than most presets. So a lot of times with presets, you apply it and you apply it to the whole collection of photos that you're going to work on, and then you're spending time pulling things back. Um, these ones are a little more subtle, so a lot of times you don't have to do anything, and then sometimes you're just adding a little contrast or bumping the shadows or pulling the blacks down. But other than that, we're not doing much. So let's go with this one. This one's a little bit backlit. So let's apply the black and white. This one just needs a little exposure bump and then bring the blacks in. And maybe the shadows here. You can even add a little contrast. See, really quick, let's check it out. Looks perfect. All right, let's try it in color. So here's our color. Here it is with no lens correction, so you get that vignette back. I think that this one might just need a little bit of blacks added, a little shadow bump, a little more contrast, and I think this one is set. This one is going to shine in black and white, so let's try that first. Okay, so there it is, just added, no adjustments at all. Here is high contrast, also looks good. And then low contrast, which looks fine also. And then here we have our bonus ones. This one's going to be matte. And this one is going to have a lot of contrast, but also stay matte. All right, so if you like the way that this looks, but you're feeling that you're losing some detail here, all you need to do is come here to highlights, pull that down, and bring the whites down a little. You can even bump the shadows up, add a little more contrast. So I'm going to reset, and I'm going to play with this one in color. All right, so as is looks good. You can see that it did pull out some of the vignetting, so this is what it looks like with no corrections. So with, without, and then here it is with a little bit of a fade. Not much, just subtle. You can probably bump the shadows a little bit more, maybe add a little bit of contrast, some exposure, and there it is, looks perfect. All right, this one, for my taste, I feel like it is a little bit cool, so I'm going to warm it up just a tad. And then here we go, color, no corrections, hard fade. So exposure is pretty much nailed. We're not having to change anything on this image. Let's try this one in black and white. So the classic black and white, hard contrast, low contrast. Hard contrast looks pretty nice on this one. Perfect. I don't think we need to change that. So let's try it in color. Here's our classic. And then here's our classic with no corrections and the hard fade. And really, we're not having to do anything more with these. Let's bring the color balance up a little bit, and then let's try this one in color. Corrections, no corrections, hard fade. So here it is with the no corrections on. I think it needs a little bit of a bump in the shadows so those midtones can breathe, and maybe an exposure bump too. And then we have our before and after. Looks perfect. All right, let's try it in black and white. Actually, I'm going to reset because we did bump exposure. All right, though, there we go. We got the classic black and white one. Hard contrast, low. Hard contrast looks good. It just needs a little bump in the shadows, or we can reset and just go with the classic. And here, I don't think we need to change anything. So again, these are just really working without any adjustments. The main thing is if we have our exposure pretty much nailed, we're going to be fine. So here, let's try this one. This one is a little bit dark. Let's just see how it works off the bat. So there it is. I think it needs to bump exposure a little bit. All right, the same one with no lens corrections. Hard fade. And then here's our black and white variations. And again, this is with no exposure change. So here's a hard contrast. So if you just bring this up a little bit, or exposure, I think we look good right off the bat. Beautiful. Okay, all right, this one I just processed. I'm going to reset it. So here is black and white, hard contrast. This one looks a little dark. So again, the shadows, if you pull the shadows up, that tends to work pretty well. Here is classic one. Here's no lens corrections. I'm going to pull the shadows up a little bit and the exposure. And I'm just personally kind of feeling like it feels a little bit orange. So that's an easy fix. You just come down into your HSL sliders and grab your orange. There's no orange, but obviously we need some. So let's just pull it back a little bit. And we have some nice subtle tones. I might have pulled that back a little too much. Give it a little more of a bump. There, looks great. Let's see. Color one. Color no lens corrections. Maybe it just needs a little bit of an exposure bump. That's it. This one will look nice in silver and black and white, so let's try that. Here's a hard contrast. Perfect. And here are my friends. Love these two. Okay, here's the color. Here's the hard fade. Here's the no lens corrections. This one I just feel like needs to have the whites just brought back a little bit, and I think it's set. Nice and bright, beautiful tones. Black and white. Here is the hard contrast. Looks great. Let's see, let's play with this one here. All right, let's go with the classic one. No lens correction, and then with the fade. Fade's subtle, but sometimes it does a lot. Okay, let's try this one out. All right, this one's pretty flat. Let's see what we can do with that. So this is classic one. This is with no lens corrections. So this one I just feel like needs, we need to bring the blacks in a little bit and the whites and the highlights in. And you can even bump the exposure down a little bit. So just a few little adjustments and there we have it. All right, I think we have one with a flash. Let's see. Yeah, here's a couple with a flash. So let's try this one in black and white with a hard contrast. Black and white normal. So here's normal. Here's hard contrast. So it gives it really, really a silver look. Oops. So what we could do with this is we could just bring the shadows up a little bit. It won't be so harsh. All right, looks good. Let's see what we can do with this in color. Color looks good. A little shadow bump maybe. Blacks down. So just real subtle stuff. Really simple, really easy. Let's see what else we can do. I love this picture. All right, this one needs black and white. So here's a hard contrast. Maybe give it a shadow bump and exposure lift. So there's a hard contrast. Let's go to normal. Looks good. All right, this one's going to be a little tough. So this one's overexposed and it's going to be difficult in color, but let's see what we can do. Just simple adjustments. All right, so before and after. It's working, looks good. And then I think this is going to shine in black and white. So that's normal, hard contrast. I still think it needs to come down in exposure. And for something like this, we can kind of fake the highlights by bringing the lights down. Something else to keep in mind is that I'm pretty heavy with the grain, so if that's something that you don't like, you can always come down and you can reduce it to what works for you. Let's look at this one. Cute puppy. Okay, here's our color. Looks great. Love this one. Maybe a little bit of an exposure bump. I think we're set. Let's try another one here. Okay, here's this one's hard backlight. Let's reset this. All right, so we have black and white one, hard contrast, low contrast, and then we have our bonus ones, super matte, less matte. All right, so for this, I'm just gonna bump the shadows, bump the exposure, bring the blacks down. And let's try it in color. There is color one with a fade, color with no corrections. So I think that this is a little dark just for me personally. So I'm going to bring that up. I'm also going to bring the temperature down a little bit. The blacks. Beautiful. Let's try this one. This one's a little bit hard. Okay, so here's our black and white. Hard contrast. Hard contrast is going to need a bump in the shadows. Exposure bump. And then here's color, the fade, and no lens correction. It looks nice. Let's try one more and then I'll sign out. Black and white 1, hard contrast, low contrast. Color 1, 1 with a fade, and then no lens corrections. And then here's our bonus black and whites. So here you're losing a little detail in the face, so just bring this down. Highlights, whites, blacks, maybe even add a little more contrast. Here's another one. So again, guys, it's just like really simple. I just want these to be clean. It's not doing a lot. There's a little bit of a split tone going on, but it's very subtle. Like I said, overall, these are very, very mild presets just to get you where you want to be, and then you can make additional adjustments from there. I do like this bonus one a lot. The thing that you need to worry about is the highlights. So you could just bring these down, and then you have kind of a nice matte, um, kind of old looking black and white. Um, so yeah, these are the new ones, the 2 new ones that were added today. All right. Thank you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email, shoot me at a fistfulofbolts.com.